Welcome back to Upside Down Data. We need to talk about Bitcoin. So it's been a little over a week since Bitcoin surpassed 100K for the first time. And now we've been trading here relatively consistently. We've been kind of going above 100K, dipping back below, getting back above. And as I record this on the 14th, we are currently trading above it. And in some ways, that's kind of wild if you think about it, that 100K is now started to feel normal. If you've been following the market, you're used to seeing 100K, six-figure Bitcoin. That's something that I don't think a lot of people would even dreamed of back down over here when Bitcoin was trading at 15 and 16K. But of course, the question is, where are we going next? It's a big milestone, but it's something that's now happened. Now people want to know about the future. So when we look at Bitcoin's current price action, it looks somewhat like a upwards accumulation. We actually saw this relatively recently. If we just go back over here to basically this time last year, October into November of 2023, we had this kind of upwards reaccumulation and then a big breakout after that, which ultimately led us into the big run up into the next year, into 2024, where we broke to new all-time highs. This is looking quite familiar. So what we really be looking for here is a break decisively above these levels, a decisive break above 100K, take us up to maybe 110, 120 and beyond is where we could be heading. Now, one of the things that you might be looking at to say, well, wait a minute though, are we really still at the point of the cycle where Bitcoin is likely to continue rallying, or are we already in the alt season phase, suggesting we're going towards the end where Bitcoin might be finding a top right around these levels? Well, one of the things we can look at is Bitcoin dominance to get a sense of how this is playing out this time around and how it's played out other times as well. So certainly if we look all the way back at the 2016-2017 going into 2018 cycle, you'll see that Bitcoin during this time, let's just go ahead and look at the Bitcoin price history here. So if we go back to that cycle, Bitcoin was on this beautiful parabolic run up to 20K, just a very lovely bull market with some volatility in it. And when you look at that, you might say, okay, well, that means that Bitcoin was leading the show. It was just going crazy and then altcoins came after. Well, actually, that's not the case. If you look at Bitcoin dominance, which is the proportion or the percentage of the total crypto market cap that is comprised of Bitcoin, that Bitcoin makes up, you'll see that very quickly in early 2017, we already saw this massive decline on Bitcoin dominance, really altcoins coming into the space, running aggressively. And then really, Bitcoin peaked out here. You had this kind of reversion back up on Bitcoin dominance, and then the final plunge, which was the real final part of the alt season here. But there's a big alt season that happened in the middle of this parabolic Bitcoin run. And even in the last cycle, if we just go ahead and look at this, similar thing. We had this massive explosion. You might think, oh, well, Bitcoin was just leading the show this whole way. That's not the case. If we just go over here and take a look, here we are in the middle of 2020, which then went into 2021. That was this big run here. But then you'll notice that in the middle of that, we had somewhat of a mini alt season here in about November of 2020. Saw a pretty big dive on Bitcoin dominance before it went and put in its ultimate peak in terms of dominance. And then that's when alt season really took off. And then we went down to these much lower levels. So we're seeing right now with Bitcoin dominance is not entirely surprising. This is something that we've seen many times in the past, where even if Bitcoin is still in the middle of a parabolic move to the upside, you will see these moments where you have these alt seasons where Bitcoin dominance will fall, but that doesn't mean that it can't go back up as Bitcoin would take over again and move towards what ultimately might be closer to its cycle top. So of course there's no guarantees, but I did just want to mention that the fact that we've seen this weakness on Bitcoin dominance, this breakdown of Bitcoin dominance already, does not mean that that means that Bitcoin is now done and that it has to just be alt season all the way. There still is a lot of precedent. In fact, it's happened every single cycle where you'll get some kind of a mini alt season on the way towards Bitcoin's ultimate top of its parabolic run. So I wanted to give that as some useful context. So what I want to talk about next then is if Bitcoin does potentially have more room to run, how will we know when that's coming and when should we maybe expect that to happen? So I want to look at some of our models and what they're saying, and then also how they'll be able to tell us when we might expect the top to be in. First off, I wanted to mention that if you want to get live access to all of our model data and on-chain data for Bitcoin and a bunch of different altcoins, you can go over to our website, polaritydigital.io. And if you sign up for our Polarity Digital Pro plan, you get access to all of that and more. So the first model I want to talk about here is our short-term upside downside potential indicator. This is one of the risk models that we have here at the channel. High values mean high risk, low values mean low risk. And this model cares about moves that play out over days to weeks, so shorter in its time horizon. So you can see is in that big push up to 100K Bitcoin here, we got pretty high on the short-term UDPI. We actually got above where we were in March of 2024 and similar levels where we were back here in some of these peaks here in late 2021 and also something like this mid-cycle peak here in 2013. So finding some resistance here, slowing down, is not entirely surprising. That's happened many times for Bitcoin when you hit those kind of short-term UDPI levels. But the good news is that we've now come down notably from then. We're actually below neutral, below zero. And so if we just look at previous times you get these spikes, that's what you tend to see. You need to see short-term risk cool off to then give you more upside potential to work with to then move back up again. So when I look at this, I say so far, so good. And the more that this cools off, the better. Rallying out of lower short-term risk levels is always going to be healthier than rallying out of higher. And ultimately, you'll have further that you can run if you rally out of a low level than if you were to rally out of a high level. So that's where I think things are already shaping up well. And the further that short-term risk goes down, the more room that Bitcoin have to work with when it decides to put in the next leg up. And unless something catastrophic happens, that still is my base case. I do not think the top is in for Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about a model next that also backs up that idea. So let's go ahead and get into that model. So this is our market cycle model. And basically, this is a very simple model to read. If price is above this blue line, means you're in a bull market. If it's below the blue line, means you're in a bear market. Very simple. Does a very, very good job of identifying these macro shifts in the market, when to be entering at the beginning of bull markets, when to be exiting before the beginning of bear markets. This is one of the reasons why I got so bullish in early 2023, back all the way down here on Bitcoin, because I saw this model flip and a lot of other models that we have were also flipping decidedly bullish. So I was bullish this entire time. And at the time, I was just saying, this is the blindly buying Bitcoin phase of the market cycle. So now we're continuing on. And the good news is that the model is still happy to kind of wait. It's not saying that we're at the top yet. You'll notice that at prior tops, you see these kind of vertical moves up, where then it starts getting a lot more concerned, and then you enter into the bear market. We haven't seen that yet. It's still giving Bitcoin a good amount of leeway. So until we flip bearish on this model, I don't see any reason to get too concerned just yet. So that's another reason why I think it makes sense to maintain bull market being the base case, and we'll reevaluate whenever this would flip bearish, but we're not there yet. And so that's when, if I look at the short-term UDPI, I see this as an opportunity when we get down to these levels, and not something that's really worrying, like if we were to be coming off of like a cycle top, you'd go down to lower risk levels. But ultimately, though there might be some volatility you can ride in the bear market, it's not really going to be as good of an opportunity as if you're in these phases of the bull market still on the way up. Okay, so the final piece of data I want to talk about is some on-chain data, specifically the percent of total Bitcoin supply that is in profit. It's just what the name suggests. This is the percent of Bitcoin that are being held on-chain that are in profit. And what you can see is that in bull markets, you will obviously get to these points where basically everyone's in profit as you're setting new all-time highs. But importantly, the market can sustain that for a while. Just look back here in 2016, 2017. Look how many times we went up and hit 100% of holders being in profit. Even in the last cycle, many times, and it took months of this before the market finally gave out and we had a correction. So we look at what's going on right now. We did hit that level, as we were saying, new all-time highs, not surprising. But this is really the first time, other than back here, but the first time in this leg up that we're seeing these levels. And if history is any guide, and again, if no catastrophes happen, we could ride this kind of behavior for a while. Now, there will be dips down, there will be corrections, there will be volatility, but this general positioning of the market to be just kind of setting new all-time highs, everyone being in profit, can last for a while before ultimately the sell pressure from all these people being in profit deciding to cash out and take their profits becomes too much, and you will then go from parabolic phase into transition into early bear market or into full-blown bear market. So that's where I'm seeing more possible room to run here. And that's where I think across the board, when you look at these, they certainly are painting a picture of us being in the end game of the cycle, right? We're not in early bull market territory anymore by any means. But I also don't think they look like we're at the end of the bull market at this point. I think we still have room to run. We have not seen these top indicators flip yet. And what I'm seeing with short-term risk cooling off here is actually a really good sign, suggests that we're maybe plotting a slower, healthier way up than just a parabolic move that gets us to super high risk levels that are unsustainable and tend to mark the beginning of bear markets. So not financial advice, you should make of these data as you will, but that's what I'm seeing overall, that it doesn't seem like this alt season we've seen so far needs to preclude further Bitcoin upside, and none of our models are suggesting, or the on-chain data are suggesting, that that would not be one's base case right now, or at least is not a quite plausible path forward. So if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates on our models and more over there. And go to our website, claritydigital.io, to see live data from our models and more. Only $15 a month to become a pro member, and you get access to all of our models and more.